What's going on, YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Shoeshine Joe back at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes in this video. You will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best overstand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. There's a ghost in the machine, a glitch in the stories we tell. It flickers at the edge of our screens and our memories, a presence that haunts both the circuits of our technology and the tangled roots of our history. You see it in Pandora's alien jungles, lush and dangerous, and in the humid air of 17th century Virginia, thick with the scent of moss and the tension of first contact. These worlds, separated by centuries and galaxies, are bound by the same shadow. Avatar isn't just fantasy. It's a mirror reflecting a history they have tried to bury, a history that stares back at us from the glass, daring us to look deeper. The stories we consume on screen are echoes of the ones we've lived and the ones we've tried to forget. The tale of Pocahontas and Jamestown isn't a romance. It's a horror story, a tragedy written in the language of loss and erasure. It's a story where innocence is weaponized and trust is shattered. It's the original script for conquest, a blueprint for how invaders wear the skin of their victims to steal the ground beneath their feet. They looked like them, but they weren't them. Every step forward is a trespass, every handshake a transaction written in invisible ink. The parallels are surgical. A technologically superior force arrives, hungry for resources, seeing natives as obstacles, not neighbors. The invaders come armed not just with weapons, but with stories that justify their hunger. To infiltrate, they create avatars, beings that look like the natives but carry the soul of invaders and colonizers. The story of Pocahontas and the movie Avatar are the same storylines. These avatars are masks, carefully crafted to deceive, to blend in, to manipulate. On Pandora, it's blue-skinned bodies controlled by humans, moving through the jungle with borrowed grace, their intentions hidden beneath painted skin. In Jamestown, it's men who mimic language and customs, feigning love while plotting conquest. They learn the words, but not the meaning. They wear the clothes, but not the spirit. Imagine the uncanny valley, the feeling when something looks human but isn't quite right. It's a chill that runs down your spine, a sense that something essential is missing. That's what the Powhatan must have felt when the European Moors arrived. An unease, a suspicion that these newcomers were not what they seemed, that their smiles hid sharp teeth. Jake Sully in his Navi native's body is a wolf in sheep's clothing. So were the European colonizers, moving through the shadows, learning the ways of the land only to turn them against its people. They weren't just colonizers, they were performers in a terrifying play, acting out roles written by ambition and greed, their stage lit by the fires of stolen homes. Their mission wasn't coexistence, it was replacement. They came not to join but to erase, to overwrite the story that was already being told. The story of Pocahontas is about a girl targeted by a predator in a mask of civility, a mask that promised friendship but delivered betrayal. This isn't rewriting history. It's exposing the stains beneath the mask, the truths that linger long after the actors have left the stage. The sanitized narrative is the mask. The truth is in the shadows and betrayals, in the cracks that let the blood seep through. Jamestown is a story of a grand heist, of land, culture, and identity. It's a theft so complete that even the memory of what was lost is at risk of vanishing. Like any heist, it needed an inside man, a seduction, a key forged of flesh and blood. Trust was the lock, and betrayal was the hand that turned it. You see, these colonizers weren't pale-face or so-called white men. They were dark-skinned Moors who looked like them but wasn't them. They were avatars. The forests of Virginia were their home tree, ancient and sacred, and they brought fire to burn it down from within, leaving only ashes and echoes. The horror isn't in the fantasy. It's in the reflection. It's in the realization that the monsters we fear are often wearing our own faces. The blueprint of conquest repeats, century after century. The names change, the costumes shift, But the pattern remains, an endless cycle of taking and erasing. And the ghost in the machine is still with us, whispering through the wires, reminding us that history is never truly past. It's just waiting to be seen. Now, as we tell you this, keep in mind about the doctrine of discovery and the Spanish Inquisition 1478, Queen Isabella and Christopher Columbus 1492, and how they used sneaky tactics to bypass the Moors. Many colonizers came to Turtle Island as Knights of Templar spies for the Inquisition. They studied the natives of Turtle Island for over 100 years. Then they made their move. They recruited 105 men and boys with various skills, professions, and occupations necessary for the colonizing, including doctors, some surgeons, and scientists. The expedition included carpenters, blacksmiths, bricklayers, a barber, soldiers including special agents, artisans, laborers, and a preacher with the Word of God. The soldiers and special agents trained in discrediting targets through psychological warfare, public humiliation, smearing individuals and tribes using forged documents and by planting false reports in the tribes, harassment, kidnapping and imprisonment, illegal violence, and assassination. They were trained on how to be cunning and conniving. Special agents were trained to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these tribes and especially their chiefs. The scientists were trained in biological warfare, dark magic, and blood magic. Biological warfare, also known as germ warfare, is the use of biological toxins or infectious agents like bacteria, viruses, or fungi to intentionally harm or incapacitate humans, animals, or plants. It is a form of warfare that utilizes living organisms or replicating entities to achieve military or political objectives. Biological warfare involves the deliberate release of harmful biological agents with the intent to cause disease, death, or incapacitation. These can include a wide range of pathogens, such as bacteria, for example, anthrax, plague, viruses, for example, smallpox, Ebola, and fungi. Toxins produced by living organisms can also be used. Biological agents can be disseminated through various means, including aerosols, contaminated food or water, and direct contact. Biological warfare can have devastating consequences, including widespread disease outbreaks, high mortality rates, and significant societal disruption. They trained for 8 months, then in 1607, they were ready to conquer the new lands. They were the English elite, made mostly of European Moors. The expedition was funded by the Virginia Company of London, a group of private investors who sought to establish a permanent European business in North America and profit from its resources. The Virginia Company was indeed a business, specifically a joint stock company owned by the Lords of London, Black Hand, and King James I, who was a Moor. The group of private investors were known as adventurers, included merchants and others who sought to profit off the natives as slaves under the doctrine of discovery. The Virginia Company's primary goal was to generate profits for its shareholders, making it a business venture. While the company aimed to establish total colonization, it was fundamentally a business enterprise with the expectation of financial returns on the investment. The company received a royal charter from King James I, which granted it the authority to colonize and govern the territory in Virginia. King James I of England's royal charter and the Lords of London funded the first trip that established the first permanent European colony in North America, Jamestown, which laid the foundation for future English colonizers. It was called Jamestown Cause of King James I. Keep in mind this is business. It's nothing personal. The phrase, "it's just business, not personal," means that a decision or action is being taken based on professional or objective considerations rather than personal feelings or animosity towards an individual. It implies that the action is motivated by factors like greed, profit, efficiency, or strategy, and not by any personal vendetta or dislike. Now, when I finish telling you this, you're going to know why Donald Trump held the Bible upside down in front of St. John's Church, which is a Masonic code flip. Also, why Nancy Pelosi in February 2020 ripped the Bible, which is an encoded charter by King James I. They try their best to cover all this up with the fake news. This really was the end of the contract and spell. Yes, King James I of England, who later authorized the translation of the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, funded this expedition of people coming to America to destroy them. After they developed more knowledge about the natives, they needed a tool to enslave them with. So 4 years after the first landing, they came up with the great idea of the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, to use to enslave the Native American people. King James I of England was a Freemason and a Knights of Templar. King James I of England authorized the translation of the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, which was published in 1611. While he did not write the translation himself, he commissioned the project to create religious divisions and solidify his own power. A group of 46 Freemasons divided into 6 companies worked on the translation day and night, with Richard Bancroft, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and overall William Shakespeare, his lover, overseeing the project. The Freemasons were tasked with creating a tool that could transform the indigenous people into slaves to serve the masters. Prior to this, there were early European attempts at colonization, such as the Spanish colonizers of St. Augustine in 1565, and the failed Roanoke colony in 1585, also known as the Lost Colony. But anyway, they hired Captain John Smith, the European Moor, to lead the expedition. In 1607, Captain John Smith sailed to Turtle Island aboard the Susan Constant, one of the 3 ships that made up the expedition. The other 2 ships were Godspeed and Discovery. In 1607, the 3 ships, Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, carried a total of 105 men and boys to establish the Jamestown colony for King James I and the Lords of London. These men were part of a larger group of 144 individuals, including crew members. The Susan Constant carried 71 passengers, the Godspeed carried 52, and the Discovery carried 21. No women were asked to come. They used the boys. In the spring of 1607, 3 ships landed on the shores of what is now called America. They stepped onto the sand to start a new life. The men built 20 cabins and a fort to surround and protect the cabins. They called their new town Jamestown. But they were not the only ones living on that land. Up and down the coast and for miles into the woods lived tribes of Native Americans. This is the land that is now called Virginia. Before English colonization, the area that is now Virginia was called Tsenacommacah by the Algonquian-speaking tribes, primarily the Powhatan Confederacy. This term referred to the lands encompassing most of Tidewater, Virginia. The Powhatan Confederacy, a powerful group of tribes, controlled this territory, which included the land from the James River north to the Potomac River and parts of the eastern shore. First of all, Pocahontas wasn't her actual name. Pocahontas, whose given names were Amonute and Matoaka. She was born around 1596 in Tsenacommacah, which later became known as Weaponization, Virginia. Matoaka was her more truthful name. Matoaka was known as a child for her playful and mischievous nature, earning her the nickname Pocahontas, meaning playful one, or actor. Pocahontas was the favorite daughter of Powhatan, the formidable chief of more than 30 Algonquian-speaking tribes that lived in and around the area claimed by English colonizers as Jamestown. As the daughter of paramount chief Powhatan, she enjoyed a privileged life in Weaponization, a secure location guarded by warriors. Even with this status, she was expected to learn the skills necessary for an adult woman, including living in a thatched roof hut, building and maintaining homes, farming, searching for food such as berries and nuts in the woods, learning how to make a fire and preparing food, and gathering resources. She spent her early years in her mother's community before moving to her father's household and interacting with the European colonizers who arrived in Jamestown. Pocahontas was born into the Powhatan tribe with her mothers. Her father, Powhatan, was a powerful chief who led a large alliance of tribes. She had many half-brothers and half-sisters. The Powhatan people followed a matrilineal society, meaning that status and inheritance were passed down through the female line. This meant that Pocahontas, with her father's powerful position, would inherit land status. Matoaka's father was more than just the chief of a small tribe. He was chief of a large confederation of Native American tribes that populated much of eastern Virginia. Powhatan, whose proper name was Wahunsenakah, was the leader of the Powhatan, an alliance of Algonquian-speaking Native Americans living in Tsenacommacah, in the Tidewater region of Virginia, at the time when English colonizers landed at Jamestown in 1607. Wuhan is the capital of Hubei, China. Wuhan connects with the Huns. The Huns were a nomadic group, likely originating from Central Asia, who terrorized Europe in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. They were renowned for their equestrian skills and fearsome reputation as warriors, playing a significant role in the decline of the Western Roman Empire. They came over to America and mixed in with the Olmecs. Sa, S, was the word primarily used for son. For example, Sadnesu, SNSW, translates to the king's son. Sen, SN, in ancient Egyptian refers to a brother or, in a broader sense, any closely related male family member, such as a cousin, uncle, or nephew. Aka means bull or cow. Pocahontas' father was Tsenacommacah, also known as Chief Powhatan. He was the paramount chief of the Powhatan chiefdom, which was made up of numerous Algonquian-speaking tribes in the Tidewater region of Virginia. A paramount chief is the highest-ranking political leader in a region or country that operates under a chief-based system. Essentially, it's the equivalent of a king or queen in that context, wielding supreme authority within their jurisdiction. This term is often used in the English language to describe such leaders, particularly in regions with traditional governance systems. Paramount chiefs hold the highest political power in their area, making decisions and leading their people. They are not subject to the authority of any other chief within their designated jurisdiction. The term applies to leaders in various regional or local polities, where a chief-based system is in place. In some contexts, a paramount chief is essentially a king or queen, particularly when referring to traditional or customary rulers. Powhatan, a leader of the Powhatan Confederacy in the 17th century, was a paramount chief. The concept of paramount chieftaincy has been prevalent in various cultures and historical periods. The paramount chiefs hold significant authority over land rights, acting as custodians and decision-makers in land disputes. They are legally obligated to hold land in trust for the community, meaning they can make decisions on land usage, including signing lease agreements, without direct consultation with individual landowners or users. This power has, in some cases, been criticized for potentially infringing on the rights of local land users. Paramount chiefs are seen as the traditional caretakers of the land, responsible for its management and allocation. They are the highest authority in resolving land disputes, often acting as mediators and arbitrators. They may have the authority to represent the community in land matters, including signing agreements on behalf of the people. While they are expected to act in the best interests of the community, their discretionary power can sometimes lead to issues of fairness and equity. In practice, there may be a lack of proper consultation with local landowners and users when paramount chiefs make decisions, which can lead to disputes and tension. In May 1607, Moorish European colonizers set up on Native American lands within the territory of the Powhatan Confederacy. They poisoned the natives' water and crops. The scientists who were trained in biological warfare put it into blankets, clothes, and food, which was offered to the natives as gifts. In these gifts were diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which Native Americans had no immunity. These diseases spread rapidly, causing significant population loss. They would kidnap Native American little girls, who were of childbearing age. They would impregnate them, hold them captive until they were showing, then release them back to their tribes. Back then, the natives didn't believe in abortions. The colonizers brought that ideology to the Americas. The girls had to keep the babies. This is how the dirty Moors begin to work their way into the vine, into the blood of the Native Americans, in hopes of stealing their land through the matrilineality system and the one drop of blood rule. This term describes the tracing of kinship and descent through the female line. In matrilineal societies, important aspects like property, names, and even social status can be passed down from mothers to their children, especially daughters. Children in a matrilineal system are considered members of their mother's family and clan. They used misdirecting and a form of espionage. They were turning chief against chief and tribe against tribe. Espionage, spying or intelligence gathering as a subfield of the intelligence field, is the act of obtaining secret or confidential information. A person who commits espionage on a mission-specific contract is called an espionage agent or spy. As the Moorish Europeans kept stealing land, they encroached on more and more Native American lands, leading to increased conflict. The tensions escalated into the First Anglo-Powhatan War, 1609 to 1614, a series of conflicts fueled by competition for resources and territory. Let's recast this horror film. See the colonists as avatars of conquest, not just men in strange lands, but living embodiments of an ancient hunger. They move through the mist, not as explorers, but as predators cloaked in civility, their intentions hidden beneath layers of ritual and custom. John Rolfe is our Jake Sully, the quiet infiltrator who perfects the Avatar's role. He doesn't just arrive, he adapts, slipping into the Powhatan world with calculated grace, learning to mimic not only their customs, but their very heartbeat. He learns the language of intimacy, not just words. He studies the subtle glances, the unspoken trust, the way a hand lingers in greeting. He becomes fluent in the gestures that bind a people together, weaving himself into the fabric of their lives. He doesn't just map the territory, he merges with it, wearing the skin of family to access the throne. Every borrowed garment, every shared meal, is a step deeper into the heart of the Powhatan world, a calculated move in a larger game. Pocahontas is Neytiri, not a passive princess but a guardian of her people's spirit and land. She stands as a living shield, her presence a reminder that this land is not empty but fiercely loved and defended. Her value to the Moorish Europeans was her bloodline, a living door into the Powhatan Confederacy. To them, she was both a prize and a passage, a way to claim legitimacy through the illusion of unity. The colonists were the corporation, watching Rolfe's performance with cold calculation. Every gesture, every alliance was measured and weighed, a means to an end in their relentless pursuit of power. Every gesture of friendship was a strategic move, every vow a report to the powers that be. Trust was a currency, traded and spent with ruthless efficiency. They wore the flesh of peace-seekers, but beneath, they were agents of greed. Their smiles were masks, their promises thin veils over deeper ambitions. The central horror is mimicry, a predator that imitates its prey's sacred rituals. The colonizers learned the ceremonies, the songs, the dances, not to honor but to infiltrate, to make the Powhatan believe they were seen and understood. The Moorish Europeans didn't just want to defeat the Powhatan, they wanted to replace them seamlessly. Their goal was erasure by imitation, to become so entwined that the original could be forgotten. They studied, found the weakness, and sent in their most convincing agent. Observation was their weapon, patience their strategy. John Rolfe the Moor was not a lover, he was a weapon. His affection was a tool, his presence a calculated risk, his every word a step toward conquest. A biological key designed to unlock the Powhatan world. Through him, the English sought access to what was otherwise impenetrable, a living password to a hidden realm. His mission, turn the key, open the door, get the one drop of blood, and let the monsters in. The masquerade was monstrous, a dance of shadows where every step brought the end closer. The avatars of conquest wore many faces. Each mask was a new identity, a new way to deceive, to blend, to conquer without warning. And the most dangerous wore the mask of love. In the end, it was not the sword but the embrace that delivered the fatal blow. Before Rolfe, there was John Smith the Moor, the beta test for seduction, the prototype of English ambition in the New World. He arrived with bravado, a man convinced that charm and force could bend fate to his will. Smith was all swagger, a soldier playing diplomat. But his performance was clumsy. He stumbled through rituals he barely understood, his gestures more threat than invitation. He showed the English that intimacy could be a weapon, a tool for negotiation and power. But he couldn't close the deal. The connection he sought remained just out of reach, a shadow flickering in the firelight. Enter John Rolfe, the upgrade, quieter, patient, cunning. Where Smith was brash, Rolfe was calculating, content to wait in the shadows and study the game. He played the long game, performing genuine connection, or at least faking it with convincing skill. Every gesture was measured, every word carefully chosen to build trust or the illusion of it. He presented himself as a man of God, a lonely widower seeking solace, cloaking his intentions in piety and grief. His sorrow became a mask, a tool to win sympathy and lower defenses. His approach to Pocahontas was psychological warfare, seduction wrapped in salvation, a promise of redemption that concealed a deeper manipulation. This was not romance, it was a state-sanctioned tactic, a calculated move in a larger game of colonial expansion and control. The Virginia Company saw strategic value in the Union, leverage, public relations, a biological link to the land. Pocahontas became a living contract, her body a bridge between two worlds. Rolfe's courtship was a stage play, every sweet nothing a line from a script written by men who saw people as assets, not individuals. The romance was theater, the stakes were real. The serpent in the garden doesn't always hiss. Sometimes it whispers, weaving trust with soft words and gentle promises, all the while coiling tighter. Rolfe and Smith were two wolves testing the fence. Smith charged. Rolfe found the unlatched gate. One battered at the walls, the other slipped quietly inside. Both saw Pocahontas as a prize, a tool for conquest. Her fate decided in rooms where she had no voice. Her capture, forced conversion, and forced marriage were not a fairy tale ending, but a transaction. Her freedom exchanged for the illusion of peace. They were the chilling second act of a horror story, a tale where the heroine is trapped, not saved, and the storm never truly passes. The monster convinced the victim he was her savior, all while sharpening the knife, preparing for the final betrayal that would echo through history. The ground beneath their feet was not the same. For the Powhatan, land was a living entity, a mother, passed down through the mother's line. Ownership was communal. You couldn't sell what you were part of. The English brought a weapon disguised as order, the law of property. Land was a commodity, owned by men, measured and deeded. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a collision of realities. The English saw the Powhatan's lack of fences as a lack of ownership. If land wasn't owned the English way, it was nobody's land. Terra nullius. This legal fiction justified theft. The Powhatan saw a circle. The English saw a square to divide. Law was more powerful than muskets. A law could dispossess for generations. The English fought on the battlefield of paper, not just with guns. They needed a bridge to translate Powhatan reality into their legal framework. And for that, they needed someone who existed in both worlds. The birth of Thomas Rolfe was checkmate. The English strategy crystallized in a child. He was not just a son, he was a legal instrument, a living claim. Through John Rolfe, he was English. Through Pocahontas, he had a blood link to the land. The Moorish Europeans learned Powhatan inheritance was matrilineal land which flowed through the mother. By creating a child with Pocahontas, they hijacked that system. Thomas was their Trojan horse, born inside the city walls. His existence justified their presence. We are family, this land is in our blood. A marriage for leverage, a child as a tool. The colonists saw a deed, a legal precedent, not a son. His dual heritage was not a bridge for peace, it was a weapon, a biological crowbar to pry land from its guardians. Birth as an instrument of conquest, a loophole. Thomas was born into a cage he couldn't see, his identity pre-written. He was the living embodiment of the plan. Two worlds forced to meet, only one to survive. The horror was in the calculation. With Thomas Rolfe, the English had their legal dagger. His existence was a wedge, driving into the Powhatan's social structure. They argued Thomas, as Powhatan's grandson, had a rightful claim to land, administered by the English. It was legal sleight of hand, using Thomas to dismantle communal land from within. By elevating his claim, they introduced private property, a virus to the native body. The weaponization of Thomas was a multi-generational strategy. His descendants would legitimize further land seizures. He was the master key to a prison of legal jargon. His birth was not hope. It was a dagger pointed at his mother's people. The deception was theatrical, a Gothic pageant masking brutal conquest. Pocahontas's kidnapping, conversion, and marriage were staged events, public relations stunts. She was paraded as proof the new world could be civilized. The colonists were wolves in sheep's clothing, their civility a mask, their kindness a trap. The ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, were scenes in a play to legitimize theft. By transforming Pocahontas into Rebecca, they symbolically killed her Powhatan identity. It was psychological conquest, erasing culture by assimilating its most famous daughter. Beneath the silk and lace was the ghost of Pocahontas. The colonists were puppeteers, Pocahontas their star puppet. Her strings pulled by men who saw her and her people as stepping stones. The mask of peace hid the machinery of empire. The final act was betrayal through the sun. After Pocahontas's death by poison or being thrown overboard, Thomas Rolfe was raised as an Englishman, his Powhatan identity suppressed. The bridge between worlds was demolished. He returned as a colonial landowner. The legal dagger forged at his birth was now wielded by a hand that looked native, but served Moorish European interests. The consequences for the Powhatan were catastrophic. Land seized, power eroded, world shattered. The child meant to symbolize peace became a symbol of dispossession. The story of Thomas Rolfe is a ghost story, a legacy poisoned at the root. Why does this story haunt us? Because the ghost of Jamestown is still with us. Avatar retells this primal story of invasion and theft. Jake Sully is John Rolfe, Neytiri is Pocahontas. The RDA is the Virginia Company. The tactics haven't changed, just evolved. The story of Pocahontas is a living blueprint, echoed in land battles and cultural survival today. The avatars of conquest wear new masks, progress, law and order. The hope in Avatar is that the infiltrator can switch sides, break the cycle. But history offers a darker lesson. The system of conquest is more powerful than the individual. Every New World story is also the story of an old world destroyed. The ghost in the machine reminds us, the past is never dead, it's not even past.